so-called peacekeepers on the site, and I think that's a good thing.
Mr. President, you have been very clear.
Let's go live to Sydney now and talk to the former Prime Minister of Australia, Malcolm Turnbull. He'd been leader for 18 months when Donald Trump became president for the first time in 2016. Thank you very much for talking to us here in the UK, Mr. Turnbull. And I'm going to ask you about Donald Trump's comments in a moment or two. But first, from your experience, how did you go about winning the respect of Donald Trump?
Well, my relationship with Donald Trump started off with an unholy row. We had entered into an agreement, a signed agreement, for the resettlement of some refugees or people, asylum seekers, who had been detained on islands in the Pacific. And we'd entered into that deal with Barack Obama. And Donald Trump did not want to go along with it. And we had a very heated argument. Well, he was much more heated than me. I was very calm. I tried to be very calm. But my proposition simply was, you can't renege on this deal. You know, it's you're like a new CEO. You've inherited a contract you don't like. You can complain about it, but you've got to abide by it. And it was an unpleasant call, and he said it was an unpleasant call, and he came very close to hanging up on me. He was furious, but he stuck to the deal. So I stood up to him, and in doing so, won his respect. I mean, Trump is a bully. That's pretty obvious. And if you give in to bullies and suck up to them, which is what most people seem to want to do with Trump, you will just get more bullying. So the key message for leaders, and I've written and talked about that since then, the best advice I can give them is be strong, stand your ground, defend your national interest, play a straight bat. You don't have to be rude or boisterous or belligerent, but do not take a backward step, because if you do, that will just be the first of many backward steps you have to take.
He ended the phone call by telling you, I've read a transcript of it, I've had it. I've been making these calls all day, and this is the most unpleasant call all day. Putin was a pleasant call. This is ridiculous. What did you think of that?
Yeah, well, of course, I was a bit taken aback by it at the time, I have to say, but on reflection, given he is so fond of Vladimir Putin, I mean, he really is fascinated by Putin. When you see them together, it is it's quite unsettling, actually. So he was always going to find a call with Putin pleasant. I think he likes Putin a lot.
Why? Why do you think he admires President Putin?
Oh, well, look, Trump's values are not the values we have had from pretty much any American president in our lifetimes. He does not believe in the international rules-based order. He does not believe that countries' sovereignty or autonomy should be protected. He believes that might is right. He believes that the strong can do as they will and the weak should suffer as they must. And, you know, that was pretty obvious in his first term, but now he's got his act together much better in his second term. You can see it very clearly. Look at the bullying of Canada, threats to make Canada the 51st state, threats to seize the Panama Canal, Greenland, and, you know, voting with Russia, Belarus and North Korea and Iran at the UN, not being prepared to say the truth, namely that Russia invaded Ukraine. I mean, this is wild stuff. And, you know, Sir Keir Starmer and other strong allies of the United States, like Australia, we have got to get our head around the new reality that this is a different world, this is a different United States. I don't think Trump is a fluke. He was elected with a solid majority. He has the Republican Party in his thrall, if you like, which wasn't the case in 2016 and 17. And so we're going to have to stand on our own 2 feet. Now, the challenge for the UK in particular, perhaps more than most countries, is that so much of its defence capabilities are completely integrated with the United States and it's very difficult for them to be operated, including the Trident ballistic missile system, for example, without the concurrence of the US. So I think, you know, France is in a stronger position there than the UK because they have control of much more control over their own defence forces. But the reality is, look, Trump is saying you've got to stand on your own 2 feet. You've got to do more yourselves. Well, we should we should accept that's the reality. It's up to the American president how he deploys America's defence resources, and we have to do more, and we have to be able to defend ourselves. And Europe must be Europe's GDP, Victoria, is so much greater than Russia's. Europe should be able to readily deal with Russia.
OK, so you've made it clear what President Trump's view is. He's said it himself tonight. He said, look, you know, there won't be US security guarantees for Ukraine. He suggested that, you know, American private companies who might be mining there would be an automatic security. But Keir Starmer is going there to ask for a US security guarantee, some kind of backstop. If Donald Trump means what he says, is there anything Sir Keir Starmer can say to change his mind?
Well, I mean, Sir Keir Starmer is a lawyer. He's a barrister, so he should be a good advocate, and he knows he's got to appeal to Trump. Now, as I said, flattery and sycophancy is not the way to go. Appeals to history and all of the years of alliance and standing by each other, that doesn't matter for a row of beans, believe me. The only arguments that will be appealing to Trump are arguments that might point out that it is in his interest to do this. It's in America's interest to do this. And so, you know, for example, I was successfully able to secure an exemption from steel and aluminium tariffs in the first Trump administration, but it wasn't by appealing to 100 years of mateship or all the wars, you know, good, bad or indifferent that we've gone into with the Americans. It was by persuading him that it was actually contrary to America's interest and the interests of American consumers to impose those tariffs on Australia. Now, we don't need to go into the specifics of that, but it is, you've got to be an advocate, you've got to be an effective advocate, and Starmer should know, as a barrister, that you've got to target your advocacy at the judge, the jury, in this case, the US president.
Stay with us, Mr Turnbull. I'm going to bring in K.T. McFarland, who was the Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump in his first administration. I suspect, K.T. McFarland, you want to respond to some of the adjectives that Mr Turnbull has been describing Donald Trump as.
Don't bother. I mean, really, at this point, I was in some of those meetings with, I won't bother. I mean, really, at this point, I was in some of those meetings with the Prime Minister. I would have interpreted them differently. But when he's saying it, when one of the things that, whether it's Keir Starmer or anybody is going to see President Trump, you know, it is a very different administration. It is a different president. I think what the brilliance of Donald Trump is that he's taken a war that 1 month ago was unwinnable. Ukraine was losing slowly, grindingly. There was no plan, no path to victory. The only thought was our European allies and Zelensky and the previous U.S. administration under President Biden. So we'll continue to fight. We want to deny Putin the win. And project managers in the eastern part of Ukraine, which is where a lot of these rare earth minerals are, that's right up against the Russian border. No Russian president is going to go kill thousands of Americans on his way to Kyiv. And as far as the American public, this is something we understand. What we don't understand is giving hundreds of billions of dollars to the Ukraine government. And even Zelensky says, I don't know where half of it went. We can't really account for half of it.
But pause there. I'm going to bring Nick in. I'll be back with you in just a moment. Nick, you've been talking to politicians here who have met Donald Trump, who've